Good afternoon. This is Talking Trade Live with On the Tools. My name's Andy Stevens. I'm going to be your host for the next half hour, 40 minutes. This week's topic, I think it's going to be quite a lively one. We're talking about trade bodies. The good, the bad, the ugly. Do you get your money's worth? And really, what changes would us trades like to see? Two great guests that are going to, well, I haven't got the mute button, so it's going to be definitely lively. We've got John, who heads up Certas, and Daniel, who heads up company over in not far from me, over in Heathrow, sort of waste management building company. So two great guys to talk. Welcome to you both. Now, firstly, let's hope we've got trades watching this, because it's 27, 28. So we know that most of them, especially the brickies, are going to be in the pub. So hopefully we've got a few watching. But let's plough straight into this. John, a lot of us trades, Daniel's going to agree with this, I'm sure. A lot of us are wondering, is this money that we spend, that can be from a few hundred up to thousands, do we get our money's worth with the various trade bodies at the moment?
I think that all depends on what who the trade body is. Not naming.
The general rule of thumb, I think us trades are getting a bit hacked off, because some of them, Checkatrade, have been bought out by HomeServe a couple of years ago. There's a lot of people have left. FMB members have dropped over the years quite significantly. A lot of new ones starting up, Find a Builder and Rate My Trade and all this. Yeah. What is there should we just not get together and create one damn good one?
I think it's the specialist trade bodies. Generally, it depends on their connection to government, isn't it? As in why, like with Daniel, why are you a member of any trade body? Often it's compliance to be able to do a job, or to gain access to site to prove that you can do it. It's also the ability to actually feed information to government, as in trade bodies should be very clear on what they're set up for. A couple of the ones you mentioned there aren't really trade bodies. They're more marketing agencies, in my view. Their design is to promote you and help your sales, whereas a traditional trade body is more about making sure you have all the info you need to do your job, so you can concentrate on doing it easily. And then it's, do I get enough value out of that?
Daniel, do we as trades get enough value? I think I know what you're going to say, mate, but what is your gut and your honest opinion on this? Don't hold back, because it's not great in my eyes.
I'll say I have to take it back a bit to explain our experience with trade bodies. Having a build firm and also running HGV vehicles, etc., you have trade bodies, like you said, FMB, Guild of Master Craftsmen, Construction Line, etc., NIC, Gas Safe, and then we have fours and stuff like that with the lorries. Now, initially when we started out, I just wanted to be a member of everything, because I thought, if I'm a member of everything, I see a Pimlico Plumbers van driving around with the Queen's emblem on the side. He definitely knows what he's doing, because he's got that emblem. And when I put out a quotation, I want to stick something on my headed paper, FMB, Guild of Master Craftsmen. It means I know what I'm doing. But my experience with those two trade bodies and build was I kind of got a phone call once a year at renewal time.
Yeah.
And I didn't feel like all I got for my money was the ability to say I was a member at that time. But moving on, we've done projects with pension funds and large-scale developers, and we were actually told we had to become a member of some of them, like Construction Line and the Considerate scheme as well. And I found those very different. The paperwork they wanted in place, it wasn't easy. They had me making method statements to do what I thought were the simplest of tasks. Like, why am I writing up how to use a grinder? I know how to use a grinder. Who is really going to read this? However, when I actually put it all together, the packages for submission, and I began to read it, I started to think to myself, have I gone on site and checked all those ladders? Have I checked it? Have I checked all these tools? And it actually refreshed me and reminded me about some of the policies that the firm actually need to have in place. So in that way, I think some of the trade bodies, I have had a good experience with them, but others, as you said, were kind of like just marketing tools.
Yeah. John, do you feel we need to almost come together and create just one or two? One is a leads based, as you said earlier, marketing, promote your brand, get leads. And then one more sort of standards government policy based, because there's a lot out there. And Daniel and me starting out years ago, I was the same. You just get every badge you can, bung it on your van, your headed paper and your business cards. But do we really know what we're getting? I think there's too many. Do you?
Well, I'd agree with you. There is a proliferation of badges, as in there are a lot of them. It's some of what Daniel was saying is like considerate contractor, etc., more commercial-based schemes for building sites. For the standard tradesman who works in RMI and in the home, you're looking at competent person schemes, for instance. As in, I chair the Competent Person Forum. There's 19 competent person schemes. CERTAS is one of them. You mentioned NIC. GasSafer is in there too. As in, these are bodies that enable you to register your work with building control, which is part of legislation. So they have a use there, and then it's depending on whatever else they add in. We put a trade association on the side because we thought the real job of a trade body is not just to help you do your job, but also to, when government do advice and say, here's our latest remit, we actually interpret it and tell you what it means to you, what you can pay attention to, what you can ignore. The pricing you mentioned earlier, as in there's wild differences and it's all a value thing. I think it comes down to, do you need it, first off? And then is it worth it? I'd say with the competent person schemes, it is. With some of the others that are more marketing agencies, it really comes down to, does it get your brand out there, and does it give you promotion you wouldn't get otherwise? Because if it does, then yes. It doesn't, maybe not.
I think it would be handy, as you said, some of the other schemes are more linked to working on commercial sites, but your end user, like your residential client, when they go on Check a Trade or whatever like that, how are they meant to differentiate between something which is government backed and something which is a marketing tool? Like, is it clear to them what the difference is to your end? Yes, on a large commercial site, but somebody looking for, let's say, a loft conversion, if they go on to the FMB and then they look on Construction Line, like, how would they differentiate between the two?
Well, I can't answer you on FMB because I actually don't know the way their site works. Check a Trade, I've had recent conversations with, because it's actually something they've picked up, that they don't know if someone is competent to do the job, and so we're helping connect them into the competency schemes to make sure that happens. So that is actually a work in progress there. Schemes that do competency compliance often don't have a lot of money, so can't go out there and get you your clients. They just make sure your job's done right and give you that sign off. I take your point entirely, as in if you look at construction, I'd say there's four main areas. You've got commercial sites that you're talking about, where you need things like CSCS cards, considerate contractor scheme, Construction Line, etc. You've got the housing associations, where it depends what the local authority says. The home building sites, I think you do some stuff with, say, NHBC, which do the warranties on a lot of that, the Home Builders Federation in there. And then you've got RMI, which is the homes, and there's 29 million homes in the UK. Where do you go? And I think it really is sector specific. And trying to work out what that all means, it is pretty difficult to a fitter coming into the industry. Government do have all this on their websites, but trying to find it easily, as in, did you know, for instance, say CERTAS, NIC, Offtech and all that are competent person schemes? Does that mean anything to you? So are you actually going to search that online and go competent person scheme?
I think the whole thing with this, John, Daniel and I have obviously been doing our side, the sort of trade side, for a number of years. I'm in my mid-40s. I'm still finding this a bit of a headache. Which way to turn? Who does what? Who's got what responsibility? Taking a step back, do you feel every tradesperson should be licensed? Because the problem you've got with a lot of these sites, you can have someone that puts the beans in a baked bean tin in a factory. Next day, he's a bricklayer. Goes on one of these sites promoting his company, and he could suddenly end up with a 50 grand extension. He's never seen a trowel in his life. So would that help if we were licensed? And if so, how the hell do we do it?
Well, obviously the FMB you mentioned earlier are push the license to build program. That's something they want to get in play. I think, from my view, I think people should be proven to be competent in the job they're doing. So if all you're doing is very low-level manual stuff, that's all you need to prove your competence for. If you put everyone to the same level, you're going to push loads of people out the industry. Plus, you then need to, as an industry, and I'm not talking about the companies themselves, as associations, you need to help people on a journey through their career. Because I think a lot of people enter sectors such as ours, which is glazing, not just doing it for a job. They don't know where they can go, what they can do, and no one is really painting a very clear picture to them that says, well, this is what I can come. Because I know Daniel has a lovely car that, according to my wife, is a lot nicer than mine. So, which he's obviously seen online. But so obviously he's managed to pick himself through a journey. But a lot of people don't see it. They fall into the industry, and then suddenly they're told, oh, you've got to comply with this and you've got to comply with that. And what they don't know is why. What does it mean to me if I do this? How does that improve my life? And then as a business owner, what does it mean to my business? Do I get more work? Do I end up in more problems? Those that seem to step around the regulation seem to get away with a lot. And all this is requiring of the bodies themselves to get together and actually raise the level collectively. So I suppose going right back to your beginning thing, a collective forum that actually where we have very clear goals of improving standards. There's so many government programs out there, such as Raising the Bar, etc., which are designed to do this, but people don't know enough about them. And what does it mean to the people on the ground?
Oh, we've never heard of them. And this goes back. We need better communication from government. This is Talking Trade Live with On the Tools. We're talking about trade bodies, good, bad, ugly. Are they worth the money? Please send comments in. Just like Ian Spro, welcome back in, regular viewer. He says, Daniel, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. I'm struggling with the governing body we use at the moment. Seems they don't do enough to help the tradesmen registered. I personally feel we're not only a tradesman, we're a customer, and when being tested, we need guidance, not to be judged for not knowing the regs inside out, which none of us do because they change every 2 minutes. Some of the inspectors really need a drop kick down to earth instead of being power mad. I'm with him 100%.
I'm completely with him. Our experiences that mentioned NIC, I haven't actually had a bad experience with them. What I will say about that company is they regularly audit us. And they have come out, and there are jobs which we've done, and they've had a look, and they've been like, well, we don't like this and we don't like that. And they've actually given us a chance to rectify it. I think that everybody should be given a chance to rectify, because if you did your 17th edition or whenever you could have done that how many years ago, yeah. On site, building regs are completely changing. I think it's really unfair not to give someone a chance to rectify their work unless there's something drastically wrong with it. And if there was something drastically wrong with it, you probably wouldn't have been a member anyway. But yeah, I completely agree with him. You definitely need to be able to rectify your work to come up to current standards, which are going to keep changing.
Yeah.
John, do you think this is coming from the top, as in government? We sort of briefly touched upon this before we came on air. Our delightful housing minister, we won't mention the case he's got against him at the moment, but you know, he was educated at Cambridge, studying history. He's now housing minister. What chance have we got?
As in, well, ministers, obviously I can't answer on behalf of ministers. What I will say is in housing, as in the MHCLG, which is the Ministry Housing Community Local Government, there is a raft of civil servants who actually really do know their stuff. As in, historically, I've said a few things that aren't necessarily positive enough, but during the COVID, these guys have worked weekends, they work very late nights, probably like a construction person, really, but they really put in the hours. And so I think we are actually definitely moving in the right direction. It might not be quick enough. And I think one of the things that we have struggled on is actually communicating to the industry at large, which is massive, as we know, £6 billion, on what we're doing and why we're doing it. Because it's not just what we're doing, as in the comment earlier is, it's about compliance really was the issue, wasn't it? Why have you failed me, and what are you expecting of me? And I suppose the other question is, why didn't you tell me that this was coming and it had changed before you actually then inspected me and told me I was wrong? And our comms needs a lot of work. And that is on the trade bodies. Government can only say, here's the rule sets. They have a lot of policy advisors. The trade bodies need to take that and translate it and make it real.
John, you touched on something there. You said policy advisors.
Yep.
So people advising on policies to do with the construction industry. But who is advising them? Is it people within the construction industry? Are they being advised by boots on the ground? Do they know? Is it people who have been on sites at different levels? We've got laborers, we've got skilled carpenters, we've got project managers, we've got architects, we've got structural engineers. For the construction industry is a huge part of the British economy. It's huge. And I feel if they're putting together policies on what we should be doing, which are meant to help us, we should be able to put forward ideas to help, because you can't just create a policy and go bang, there you go, like that policy's for you. It wouldn't work in any other industry, so it's not going to work in our industry.
Yeah, as in the policy advisors do come from industry, but obviously that you can never have. They won't have the entire collective knowledge. It's up to them to go and find it. As in, I do give some advice on stuff. And I sit as chair of the Competent Person Forum. If you go into roofing, I know a bit about it, but if I really want to know what I'm talking about, to be honest, I'll probably go to the NFRC and ask them and their technical team, which is very, very good, and say, look, what does this mean? And then translate it back and say that's the view from roofing.
John, let me just ask you, that team you speak to, are they tradespeople or suits?
No, the tradespeople. As in, you'll find.
I think a comment. Sorry, it's shot off the bottom. Let me go back and find it. Someone was saying about Neil Allen. Need top builders to be a minister. They know their game, and this is something we've said before. I honestly think we need more skilled tradespeople. It doesn't matter what your trade is, but people that actually come across problems in old houses, in new builds, underground, whatever we're doing, that government can actually talk to. Because at the moment, there seems to be a big gap between trade bodies and government and the rest of us, which is obviously a huge.
Andy, I would say, we touched on this briefly earlier, I would say we need to create some sort of committee to represent the construction industry, formed of people at different levels within construction. People who were possibly, just the same as in you have a minister for your area, people within the trade who were possibly elected through various registered bodies, but people to represent our interests, I think, and to have people at all different levels, as you say, someone from a Labour background, someone at the top of the food chain, someone in the middle, to talk through, to relay the experiences and what works and what doesn't work in construction, because construction has a different meaning for everybody in the industry, and John, you can't keep everyone happy. But
John, do you think if I'm 100% with Daniel on this, and I've been bleating on about it to all sorts of people for years, if it's going to happen, let's see. But let's say a task force is set up, let's say 12 members, and we pull in everybody from someone that's run a huge firm building new houses, down to a trainee bricklayer, down to a 40-year experienced spark, down to an architect. So we've got, as Daniel says, somebody from each sector that make up construction, because that group, to me, is invaluable, because you've got boots on the ground, you've got people dealing with planning authorities, you've got obviously the trade bodies involvement with the sparks and everything else. To me, you can't pay for that. And if you had 12, 15, you don't want too many, because obviously the cost of tea and biscuits for our meetings would go through the roof. But if we had about 12 people of all those areas, to me, government need to listen to them, because all this flannel we're getting at the moment. There was something this morning that the housing minister came out with, saying we're putting this money in. It means more work for brickies, labourers, and builders. What an stupid comment. So does that mean that possibly some roofers or scaffolders or decorators are going to think, well, that doesn't mean me? It's got to be, and I've said this before, putting it across in our language. We don't speak like suits in government, and we don't understand that way. So back to this sort of very long question, if we got together, these 12 people, surely that going to government and advising would sort this mess out.
It would be lovely if it did, as in I think I can speak about my own association, Certas. We have that sort of structure where we talk to the local installers, we have some nationals, and we started talking to the supply chain too. And off that comes our policy and our view. I think it would be too arrogant of us to believe we know better than the people who actually do the jobs. And so you need to collate that and put that through, and that's the view of local glaziers. I think a number of other trade associations, certainly the certification bodies, do have that. But then often when they collate together, what impacts one industry in one way, the others think, oh, no, I want that. You take the Green Homes Grant, as in I'd love it if they said that it can all go into replacing old double glazing. I'd love the use of that money. But I think government took the view that actually if you dealt with the insulation, you're going to have more impact on the climate change targets. So
because they weren't speaking to the right people. If this task force was speaking to government, you would have had input through this task force to say exactly that. And I've taken a bit of time off recently and sort of gone to the Cotswolds and down on the coast in Sussex. I was in a restaurant last night that was built in 1142. It is literally 45 degrees. There's rot everywhere in all the timbers, and you look at it and think, this is brilliant. And that needs care. This is history. I mean, that's a lot of years old, 800, 900. And you think this is part of our, architectural history. This is brilliant. And tourists from all over the world come and see this. So, but if you ask government to go and write a paper on looking after old buildings, they wouldn't have a clue. So I'm really strong, and Daniel as well, by the sounds of it. Daniel, if we get this task force together and sit ourselves under government that then talk to all the different trade bodies, don't you think that's the way forward?
I completely think that's the way forward. And that is that not part of us being in a democracy as well? As is it not? Especially if those people were elected, and when they're making policies, like you mentioned something earlier. You mentioned a policy about what did you call it? The Green
Homes Grant.
The Green Homes Grant, or when Boris says that he's going to kickstart the economy and he's going to put money in, like, okay, we're going to put money in, we're all going to be busy, but where's that money going? What's it doing? How are we kickstarting the economy? What does a labourer or a carpenter, how is it kickstarting for him? Are these? It would be not easier, but it would be more helpful if these things were dissected into different languages that people could sit down and have a look and say, oh, okay, well, I could do this or I could do that. And, just to give us some guidance on these policies, as opposed to a speech that says we're going to kickstart the economy, and you go to work the next day and you don't actually, nothing's really changed. Nothing ever really changes for you when your boot's on the ground. Nothing actually really changes.
Well, also, Daniel, you remember when this initial billions was going to be launched into construction to kickstart the economy again a few weeks ago, we had a massive material shortage. So what are we going to build houses out of? Are we going to be using, Lego or shoe boxes? Because, there was the plaster shortage, which hopefully is coming back to better. But there's talk of sheet materials, ply, OSB and everything coming over, obviously, from our friends in China. There's going to be a shortage on that. Dulux ran out of tins to put their paint in, according to a couple of decorators I know. So this is back to what we were saying. If this task force was here, they could come to us and say, right, we've got X billion to restart the economy. How are we going to do it? But more importantly, how are we going to communicate it to all the workers? Because one-man bands and companies with 10, 20, not big companies, but micro and SMEs, if we understood it better, we could then look forward. And do you feel that, John, that there is a big gulf in not the communication as such, but the way it's put across? Because Daniel and I, having a pint in the pub, are going to be talking very different to, the housing minister and minister of society. So that what they say to us could be done in Greek or Latin.
I think it's difficult to do a collective thing across all of construction. I think you have to allow for sector differences. As in, I think you mentioned gas safe earlier. Obviously, the gas industry is a qualified industry. The glazing industry is not. Neither is the roofing industry. As in, we're more qualified by experience. So then you have to prove competence. So if you make a rule that says goes into that territory of how do you determine someone's competent, you have to allow for the two different ways of doing things. I think you also have to allow for the fact that people learn differently. Electricians generally tend to be better at, say, calculations than other industries, and you have to, and then they attract a certain type of person, don't they? As in, I often think those that work in the fabric side are tougher, are more hardened, than those that work inside the house. And so all these things play. And I think the hardest thing you can ever do is say, I know everything, because you're so biased by where you stand. You don't think you are, but you are. And so that is your view. And then you confirm it, and then someone else says, oh, I sort of agree with you. And then you think, oh, definitely. Confirmation bias plays then. So we've got to allow for all that. And I think the way is the sectors themselves need to work with who is in their sector, and then the sectors need to get together and collaborate. And instead of just saying we are glazing and all we care about is the glazers, we should actually care about the plumbers, we should care about the roofers.
But this goes back to this task force idea.
Yeah.
If we had someone like yourself representing the glazing industry,
Yeah.
I appreciate we probably couldn't have every single trade because we'd end up with possibly too many, but we could cover all the different sectors. You say construction is massive.
We could cover main areas. We could cover.
Yeah, and I
could have.
Sorry, Daniel, go on.
Sorry, and we could have some somebody representing demolition. We could have someone from groundworks. We could have someone from new builds. We could have someone. 12 is a good number to which could represent the entire industry. I see you laughing there, John.
No, it's just because government do have these sort of forums already in play, but I
don't know about them. Do you, Daniel?
No, but the size of them.
I don't know. No.
As in how many home building? There's 300,000 new homes built every year. Well, that's the target. About 2 at the moment. So there's you have obviously the NHBC whose warranty covers 70%, but they're not the only ones. You have those that do self-build. So that in itself is when you start adding up all those involved, the Redrose of this world, the Taylor Wimpey's, that's a big collection of people. And then you'll have the same again in housing association work. There's about 6 million properties in that territory. Then you've got the RMI sector, another 29 million. And actually the complexities of each environment is different. What you do on a commercial site is very different to what you do in that.
Yeah. But I think we're talking about a big industry. Was it 9-10% of GDP construction here? Would possibly what we're looking at, rather than just having a dozen on this main task force, is perhaps having a smaller one underneath with everyone represented. So let's say that it is another dozen or 20, and that then feeds into this task force. Because back to the communication, what you just commented on, John, these different bodies from government, I've never heard of them. I don't know where they are, what they do, who's involved. Can we be involved? And this is back to the communication point. This is 2020. Well, surely if we could have some sort of app or website every builder has on their phone, so you get there at 7:30 in the morning, flip the kettle on, cup of tea, fag, whatever they're doing, and have a quick look, then we're going to be more up to speed. Because at the moment, communication, I think, is letting us down from government.
Obviously, if you use it through an app, I'll have to get my 13-year-old daughter to show me how to do it. But I think if you take, say, for instance, in the home environment, as in there's competent persons schemes, you've listed a few there. They register 3.7 million jobs a year to building control on behalf of their members. There's 19 of them. They do meet together in the competent person forum, and their job is then to work with government and MHCLG on the building regs and how it's interpreted down to their members and how you ensure people are compliant. That is in play. But that's just one area, and I think this is the what you're saying would be wonderful if it worked, and if you ever set up something like that, I'm all for it and getting involved. But I think the differences makes it so difficult, and you've actually then have to break it down, don't you? You then go sector by sector, and suddenly you've got this massive hierarchy structure for a flow of information that needs to flow really quickly. When something changes, how do you get it all through and discussed, and then all the way back to government? And you say, by the way, what you've just done doesn't quite work over here, but does work there.
Well, Jenny Ann Hill has put 2 comments, and both of them, they follow on really well from each other. She said, I've worked a lot with civil servants, and while they're good people, which we've not debated at all, often the decision makers are actually so far removed from the day-to-day running, the decisions rarely work in practice. And she follows it up with, you need representatives at the table of any decision making who understand the industry firsthand. This is back to what we were saying, Daniel. They may be great people. They may be very intelligent and have fancy degrees from nice universities, but we need more people on the ground influencing and saying, do you realise that all this homegrown timber from Scotland is fast grown, it's not seasons, it's drying out, it's like bananas, 70% comes off a lorry, gets sent back. That is causing me a delay. The chippies are obviously getting knock-on effect and the whole job slows up. This is the reality, not, what digestible we're having with our tea.
Agreed.
I don't agree with you. So.
You don't? Why not?
I should disagree with you.
No. Do you agree?
No, I do agree.
Yeah.
I can't say any. We're here. We want it to work, and we want it to work better than it does today.
Where do you think, John? Do you think what I'm trying to think? Let's say I'm just very hypothetically. Let's say On the Tools has got over 4 million followers. It's a huge media following, and it's great because it's about construction, which is what we all do and love. Let's say On the Tools, this is very hypothetical, set up a task force brought in by experts. So, us three, we could speak to government ministers, we can speak to NIC. So we got together a force. John, where would you see that sitting to start with, not to end up, but initially for advice from Daniel, what he does, from me with what I do, feeding in day-to-day realities, which is what Jenny Ann Hill said. Where could we start off and sit to get that information to the right people, as you say, as soon as possible?
I would say it would naturally sit with, you need to pick some associations in there that will carry your message. Government has made it very clear. Well, sorry, I think they've made it clear. You'll probably say you haven't heard it because I sit at a slightly different relationship to them, that they are very interested in what goes on the ground with SMEs and micro businesses. They are the heart of industry and the construction industry. And often I think they feel that they are divorced from what's really going on, and it's all done for the big players. So I don't think you'll get a no. I think you'll get more of, okay, what do you want us to do with it? Because they don't want moans, they want practical ideas. And
this is it.
Yeah, we could outline current issues, like Andy said, material shortages. This is the problem. We can't get hold of any timber. This is the problem. Here's the solution. Can you put money into this? Can we do it? So if we could outline immediate problems, because a problem we're having with materials here is going to take a long time for that. It'll never get to the top. And you can put all the money into construction you like. If we don't have the materials to build, we can't do anything.
Well, the other thing, Daniel, is what happens if you haven't got the apprentices coming through? I mean, that's a whole subject for another day. But, these things that Daniel and me are seeing, John, if we could have this task force to say, right, today, this is the issue we've got.
Yeah.
Not leaving it 6 months to be heard, because the following week it's old news. As Daniel knows, it could be landfill charges have gone through the roof. The skips are going to go up loads, more fly tipping, and
don't even say that, mate. Please.
I know.
You're talking about a form of association, as in one of the things. There's 3,000 trade associations in the UK, which is a huge number. But the primary body for them is the Trade Association Forum, which is sponsored by BEIS, which is government department. I'd look at putting something together and talking to them about flowing information directly into BEIS. I can tell you they'll probably be interested in having that conversation.
Well, unfortunately, a little message from producer George. We have run out of time. I knew this would fly by. Apologies to all the comments that you sent in that we couldn't read out. I think this is one of those that probably could have gone on for about another hour or so, and we wouldn't have even touched upon it. The great thing is everyone's in the same boat, looking at the comments, speaking to you, Daniel and John. We all believe that this needs to change for the better. Just finally, to wrap up, Daniel, where would you like to see this heading if you were Mr. Housing Minister? What would you do tomorrow?
If I was Mr. Housing Minister,
what's the first thing you would do to get this mess sorted?
The first thing I would do is begin to try and consult with people. If I was the Housing Minister, I'd try to consult and find out what is actually going on outside of my window. I'd open the curtains and I'd have a look outside, and I'd try to find out what is going on so I could adapt accordingly and try to do something to actually really kickstart it. Not say I want to do it, act something which will actually work and put something into place.
Yeah, totally with you, Daniel. John, yours will be obviously from a slightly different viewpoint, but if you were elevated up to the echelons of housing minister, Daniel's point I'm 100% with. I'll be interested to hear what you'd do.
I'd actually try and progress further on what they are trying to say. Is in with a lot of what government has said is they're saying it's up to industry to solve it, and then industry isn't quite hearing it, because I don't think the associations currently are doing a good enough job. As in they want industry and collective bodies to come forward and make it very simple to them, is this equals that. And at the moment there's a little too much conflict, a little too much self-interest, and commercial aspects are getting in the way. And I think that's the thing. You've got to enable industry and then listen to the answer. I think it's fair to say they have said to industry, you need to do it. Has industry responded properly enough? Probably not. Certainly not collectively enough.
Well, maybe it's time for change. Daniel and John, thanks ever so much for joining me. It's what is it now? It's just gone 1. The sun is shining, so I'm going to go and join all the